Hi, welcome to my CodeRage X session. My name is Andrea Magni and this session is about TFrameStand and how to use it to build good-looking and consistent application with FireMonkey frames. I'm a computer engineer. I live in Italy, in the Milan area, and I'm a long-time Delphi developer since Delphi 2. So it's about 15 years I work with Delphi every day, and I've been a freelance developer. Now I'm a consultant and a trainer to other developers and companies using Delphi related technologies. Since 2014, I've joined the Embarcadero MVP program, and on the slide you can find all my contact information. This session is about TFrameStand. That is a component I've decided to build in the latest months because I had to do some mobile development with Delphi, and there's a huge hype on how is your user interface, and you have to provide a top class user interface that should be responsive, nice looking. If you're building applications to a specific platform, let's say Android, you may want to have some of the more modern elements from a UI point of view, and think about the material design by Google. And so I was looking on how to build them in a Delphi mobile application. Most of the mobile application are a set of views you have to show to the user. These views are made of panels. They may have some floating buttons. Everything is added with transitions, animations, and things like that. And if you start building a mobile application like that, it's easy to get to a situation where you have a single form and a lot of components on it. This can be very difficult to maintain because the form is too crowded. Working with so many components in the designer can lead to some problems. You may always mess up things here and there. So it's a very good idea to split your user interface into modules. T-frames have been introduced a long time ago in Delphi, in the VCL at first, and also in FireMonkey. Provide you a way to box a certain number of controls and reuse it while having a chance to design them in a separate unit that is the frame unit. Why you may want to do that apart from the maintainability issues? It is very important that your application is visually consistent throughout all the views. The TFrameStand component is a non-visual FireMonkey component. The main purpose is, okay, I want to have frames in my application. Somehow, at runtime, I will have the need to say, okay, I want to show that frame. So the main purpose of the component is simply to show frames to the user, adding some nice functionalities like, let's say you have your frames and you want to show them to the user covering the whole screen by fading in these views or sliding in from left or from right with a visual animation, let's say. You can implement this animation once and use it for all your frames. And this is made through stands that are a layer that you have in between the frame you want to show to the user and the parent object you are using. Key aspects are that stands can be easily customized through the style designer because they are described as a style object. So that's why you can see a style book in the screenshot of this slide. And you can then mix and match between stands and frames. This means that if you build a stand performing a specific transition, you can use this stand to show different frames. But also, if you have a frame and you want to stress out some situation or a state condition or things like that, you may want to show the same frame using different stands. The picture summarizes a bit what I'm telling, and you can see TFrameStand as a glue across the frame, the stand, and the parent object. Please keep in mind that the parent can be the form or any other FireMonkey control. So we will see some examples where the frame is shown to the wall form, but also just to cover a single FireMonkey control, let's say a list view or a edit. The stand is defined through style objects, so you will use the FireMonkey style designer. The frame can be any FireMonkey frame. There's no restrictions. You don't have to inherit from a base class or things like that. The main purpose of this component is to gain visual consistency throughout your application by decoupling and reusing some part of your user interface, mostly the stands. It depends on your approach, but mostly we are talking about the stands that can be reusable. I built this schema. That means you have your TFrame descendant classes, you have your stand, and you ask TFrameStand to combine these two items into a composition that I will call the FrameStand, meaning the stand with its frame attached. And there is a data structure that holds all the references to a frame stand, and it is the TFrameInfo class. That is a generic type that has the frame class as parameter. So you have a TFrame of your specific TFrame descendant class, and it will be easy to handle reference to the frame this way because you don't have to continuously make typecasts to access your methods and properties. So it's quite handy to have this shortcut. Keep in mind that when you want to show or hide this composition, you are no more showing or hiding the frame, but that you can use the show and hide methods of the TFrameInfo class. Okay, a few things before getting to some demos. You may be wondering how I can put this TFrame class using this stand on this parent object without precisely tell to the component where I want the frame to be attached to the stand. There's a naming convention I've followed, and if in the stand there's a component named container, that will be the parent of your frame instance. This is a lot the design of the stand, because you can concentrate yourself on building a nice looking stand and simply decide where is the point you want the frame attached by simply adding a layout and naming it container, and that's all you have to do. Another nice thing that you get with TFrameStand is that you can obviously have animations into the stand definition and even in your frame class, and you can have them fired automatically if you follow a certain naming convention. There are two properties where you can customize the pattern, but the default are that if you name an animation on show whatever, it will be triggered when you call the show method on the frame stand, and if you call it on hide whatever, it will be triggered when you hide the frame stand. It's nice to know that the support for animation is complete, so if you have some hide animation, that means you may have a fade-in transition to show the frame to the user, and a fade-out transition when you want to hide the frame. So it's both ways. And TFrameStand has a support to wait the hide animation to finish before actually destroying the frame stand. And another thing I want to talk about is the first thing that I was doing when I decided to start building this component was to provide to the user a notification that I was running something in the background. It is a very common problem, especially when building a mobile application, because of what I was saying before. That is, you need to provide a very responsive user interface. In a mobile application, it's easy to have a situation where you have to make a remote server call and you don't know how long it will take, or maybe you are simply processing some data, but it will take 1 second or 2, and you don't want your user interface to freeze. It is very important. So it's natural to use the parallel programming library and have the task run in a separate thread in the background, and this will make your application responsive. But the problem is, okay, I know that I'm doing something on the background, but my user doesn't. So I want to give a visual notification that I'm actually doing something in the background, and maybe I have to provide also some updates during the execution of the background task. That's why I've added to the TFrameInfo class, to the show method, 2 optional arguments that are anonymous methods, where the first one is where you can add the code you want to be executed in the background. The second argument will be called when the task has completed. So it is a one-liner of code to ask FrameStand to show a certain frame class through a certain stand while doing a certain task, and hide the frame stand when the task has completed. A few other topics I want to cover before getting to the code are the context dependency injection mechanism that will provide you as a TFrame developer a way to get a reference to some context objects that are the FrameInfo data structure, or the parent object, a reference to the parent object, or to the stand object, and or to the container object, that can be useful because you may want to close the frame stand from within your TFrame code, and you may need some property values from the parent object or from the stand object to tune your TFrame instance. So it's a very handy way to provide you a reference without forcing you to inherit from a base class or implement some interfaces and so on. Also, when delegating the showing and the hiding of your TFrame to my FrameStand component, you may want to be able to perform some task in correspondence of the hide and show events. So there's an attribute-based way to mark some methods of your TFrame for execution in correspondence of the showing and the hiding of your frame. So it's easy to initialize some aspect of your frames, or it's a good place where to get some information of your context using the mechanism I was telling you just before, and so on. And the last thing before getting to the demos is the common action mechanism that jumps in when you may have different stands and they all have a functionality built in themselves. Let's say a close button, for example. What is very important is not to duplicate this action implementation for each stand or frame you're showing. So given there's no way to include some code into a style definition, as far as I know, I've decided to provide a registration mechanism into TFrameStand where you can register an anonymous methods in pair with a matching pattern, and TFrameStand will automatically bind any T button it will encounter while looking at your stand and your TFrame descendant class. And when you click on the button that has a name that matches the pattern, the common action will be executed. So it's time to get to the code. This is an empty application. We have a form and just a toolbar, a couple of buttons, and a layout. My TFrameStand component and the style book that is linked to the FrameStand. There's no code, and I've prepared a very simple Hello World frame. It's a FireMonkey frame with a label on it, and it is aligned in the center of the frame. The frame has the align property set to client, so it will fit the wall container area. The first step, of course, is how to show the frame and how to hide it. So simply I can add the unit of the frame to my form and implement the on click of my show button. I can do this way: FrameStand 1 new Hello World frame. I want to specify a parent object, so I will set it to layout 1. This method will return to me a frame info instance that I want to store in a member of my for. Hello World frame. Okay. Now that I have a reference, I can simply show it. To hide it and close it, it's very simple, because if I have my reference, I can simply ask the FrameStand to hide the stand and then to close it. That means to get rid of it and have things destroyed and so on. So this is the code I need to hide and close my FrameStand. So what happens is that if I click show, my frame is instantiated and parented to my stand that is parented to my layout, and if I do close, show it. Okay, it works. Okay, now we can provide a stand to our frame. So we can edit the style book, add a layout, for example, and I want to build a very simple lightbox-like effect, so I can call it lightbox, and I will put a rectangle into it. I will say that the rectangle is black, but it's semi-transparent, and it's aligned on contents. Then I will add a second layout. I will align it to the center and give it proper dimension to it. Okay, remember the naming conventions. I have to call it container, so the frame will be parented into this component. Okay, apply and close. I have named my stand lightbox, so I want to use that, and I can specify that I want to use a specific stand. So that's enough. If I run my application, I can click on show button and see that my TFrameStand is now using my stand to show my frame, and I can hide it and show it again, and so on. Okay, so we can enhance a bit our lightbox effect, adding an animation. So we can say that, okay, the rectangle is black, and we want the float animation on the wall stand, and we want to animate the opacity property from 0 to 1. We are adding the animation to the lightbox and not to the rectangle, so I want to go from 0 to 1. I simply have to remember to honor the naming convention and call this float animation on show whatever, and I will call it on show fade in, and set up some parameters of the animation, like the interpolation that can be quadratic, and the duration that is half a second. That's it. And so if I run my application now, you will see that when I click on the show button, the effect is that my frame stand is fading in. Okay. Please note that you can add animations also on the frame itself. So if you like, you may add a float animation to our label, and for example, change the rotation angle from 0 to 360. We can call this animation on show spin, and it's better to have not to have a couple of seconds. Okay, and we can leave it linear. Okay, so I want my label to spin when the frame is shown. So if I run now, what happens is that I have the fade in animation, but also the label that is spinning on show. All of these are only with some naming convention and working at design time very easily. Of course, I can add other stands to my stylebook, and for example, I will add a new one. I will call it blue stand. I want it to be covering the parent area, to have a rectangle implementing a background. I call it blue, so I will use this bluish color. And I can add a layout. to be the container of my frame, so I will call it container, and I want this layout to be on the bottom. I want it to have, let's say, 50 margins. I want it to be 100 in 8, and what I want to do is I want it to slide in from the bottom when I show the stand, for example. So I can add float animation to my container. I want to animate the margin bottom property from let's say less 100 to it was 50, so 50 is in a quarter of a second with a bounce interpolation in and out, and I have to honor the naming convention. I will call it on show slide in, and this would be enough, but I have to instruct FrameStand to use the blue stand instead of the light box stand. So I've edited the stand, I've told to FrameStand to use it, and what happens is this thing, that I can now have the same frame with its own animation, but I've changed the stand. So I have two different stands showing the same frame. What I want to do now is to add a second frame to my project, and try to have a different content, for example an image. Let's load an image. Okay, this is the image I want to use, and I can align this client so it is perfect. What I want to do is save this frame as my frames.picture and CodeRage X, and I want to name it properly. The frame, not the image. CodeRage X frame, and I'd like to have a chance to show it, so I will add another button. Show CodeRage. Implementation is very easy. FrameStand 1 dot new well, I have to add my CodeRage X unit. CodeRage X frame. I can say that yes, I want it to be on layout 1, and yes, I want to use the blue stand. And here there's a problem, because the new method will return to me a TFrameInfo of TCodeRage X frame, while FFrameInfo is not the same type. But I can do this way. CodeRage frame info, so we are not messing with the other one, and CodeRage frame info the CodeRage X frame. Okay, perfect. So now I will add also another button to hide it. Close CodeRage X. It's exactly the same code. Okay, so now I simply have to check the alignment of my frame, and I want it to be client because I want it to fill the container, and run my application. Remember that the spinning animation was on the frame, so this one doesn't have it, but the stand is exactly the same, and so is the animation with the sliding from bottom to top. What if I need to close the frame stand from within the frame itself? For example, I may want that if the user clicks on the image, I want to close the frame stand, but there's a problem. I don't have a reference to the frame stand component or to the frame info object that is underlying all the thing. But how can I get a reference to them? I don't want to add the form unit to the frame unit to avoid circular references and so on. And so I can take advantage of the frame stand dependency injection mechanism that is able to inject to the frame, for example, the frame info instance that is the current one. So if I decorate with this frame info attribute a member of my TFrame with the proper type, the frame stand component will inject here a valid reference to the current frame info instance. So it will be very easy to ask the frame info to hide itself and to close itself when it's done. So it's easy as that to add this functionality to my CodeRage frame. So now I can automatically close the frame responding to user interaction or responding to a timer or some other piece of code you may want to write in the frame code. There's another attribute-based mechanism that is, for example, very useful if you want to adjust something on the frame before showing the frame stand. And there's another attribute that is before show, and it is used to decorate any methods you may want to declare my before show, and this method will be called before showing your frame stand. You can do whatever you want because the frame, the stand, and all the objects are already ready when this event is called. So, for example, we may want to rotate a bit the image. What happens is that I can get my image rotated before showing it. Of course, it's just an example. You may want to do something more useful or get some information from the info, for the frame info, for example, you may want to know who's the parent. So in this case, it is the layout 1, or you may want to know to have a reference to the stand, what stand is being used, and so on. So you have full control of your execution of the frame stand. Another functionality I've told you are the common actions. You can register a common action on your FrameStand component by code. So on the onCreate event of the form, you can add a common action that is a pair of information. The first one is the naming pattern. It will be used to match any T button encountered to see if matches or not with the common action. So for example, I may want to have a say hello pattern. So everything that will start its name with say hello will match. And I can provide a procedure, an anonymous method that will have as parameter TFrameInfo TFrame. And what I can do here is to say something like hello, the frame is and info.frame.class name. So this common action will be fired if a component with a matching name will be encountered in the stand or in the frame. So what I want to do here is to add a button to my blue stand right over the container, or here in a corner. It's not important where it is. So if I add this, well, it's better if I add the layout. Okay, a layout on top, and I will put the button into this layout. I will align it to the center, and I have to name it properly. So say hello frame stand. The text will be say hello, and it's everything I have to do, because if now I run my application, and I show my hello world frame, and I click on say hello, is going to tell me hello, the frame is the hello world frame. And if I do the same with the CodeRage button, I will get the correct class name. So the button is in the stand definition, has a name that matches with the common action, and the common action is executed when you click on the button. Remember that there's a project group in the demo folder where you can have several demos. I have launched them all together here. You can see a lot of examples of use. So this is the wait frame that integrates the parallel programming library to perform a background task. And this is the Lightbox demo that shows you how to use common actions and how to have different frames with the same stand. This is the material button demo that helps you having a floating button on your applications, like the Google Material Design suggests. And this one is the one taken from the Google guidelines that helps you having this effect rolling out content when you click on an item on a list view. And this is a fading in effect where you can see picture fading in as you would do in a mobile application. These are various examples of having some menus like the Android camera application rolling out from left or from right over your content. And the last one is quite uncommon use of the TFrameStand, but is an helper for a T-edit that can be used to provide some special calculation helpers or things like that to help your user input some values into a specific edit. Okay, so back to my slides, and just want to tell you that there are some other advanced features, but I'm not going to cover them in this presentation. Simply want to state that there's a mechanism to dynamically select or override the actual frame class that is being used at runtime, and this can be useful to customize behaviors on a specific criteria that you can define yourself, maybe the platform, the device, or things like that. I just added a component editor to TFrameStand, so it's easier to preview the stand behavior directly in the IDE. And of course, I provided a test frame as a placeholder for your real frame. And I've added also other 3 new demos, a picture wall, button set, and edit helper that you have seen very briefly just a few minutes ago. So I want to remember you that TFrameStand is open source. I've chosen the no license model, but given it's published on GitHub, you are able to use it freely and to fork it. And there's the link of my GitHub repository and to a post on my blog where you can get some basic informations like in this presentation. Thanks for watching, and I'm here for questions. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Andrea, for that great presentation. TFrameStand looks really, really cool. I'm excited to start using it in my application development.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to hear that.
So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the question panel in the GoToWebinar software, and we'll get those answered for you right away. And yeah, very cool stuff.
Thank you. I hope it will be useful to many of you, and I'm here to hear some questions or comments about that.
So there's a few questions that you already answered here, but I got some new ones coming in as well. What's the mechanism to write the square brackets a name procedure, so putting the attribute on the procedure like you did?
Well, I'm decorating some instance methods to have those methods fired at runtime, so you can easily provide some code and have it run by TFrameStand at the proper time.
So that's an attribute you're putting on that, right?
Yes, those are attributes, standard Delphi attributes.
Could we have the links to the GitHub and blog here? Yeah, let me go ahead and back up here to those. Just 1 second.
Useful to. And I've added. Fortunately,
this makes.
To use it.
There we go. There's the links for the. So if someone wants to type those in the chat window, then that would be. Share those with everybody.
Okay.
And
I've sent us a submission to have it on Get It also. So.
Oh, great.
You will have it on Get It soon.
That's great. I was going to suggest that.
Thanks. So I saw someone is asking if it's stable on all platforms. Well, I can say that I've tested on Windows and Android mostly, but given its pure FireMonkey approach, I think it will work everywhere. Just beware of native controls because, of course, if you are orchestrating some transitions, they will behave as usual, being always on top.
Is there a practical sample and usage guide?
Samples are included in the repository. There's a demos folder. Still, I don't have a proper documentation.
Well, you can just link people to this video because it does a pretty good job of explaining it all.
Yeah. I saw a question about that I'm not sure I got the question right, but someone is asking about having an array of frames working like polymorphism. And well, there's a mechanism that is just stated in this presentation. You can code against an ancestor TFrame class and have it substituted at runtime as you like. So, for example, someone asked me to add a functionality to change the actual frame class with respect to the actual platform that the application is running on. So this is possible.
Okay. Is there action messages from the frame to the host and vice versa?
There's no T-action support. So action messaging from frame to host. Well, you can have a reference of the host. I think you mean the parent object from within the frame code. And that's the way you can call something from the frame to the parent. And from the outside, you have this TFrame info structure with a reference to the frame. So you can communicate both ways, if I get the question right.
Yeah, I think he's talking about specifically using actions, but
I'm thinking adding some support to the action, obviously, because it would be nice to have.
Okay, yeah. Is there a way to execute different actions depending on which OS the application is running on?
Yes, you can provide different frames. As I was saying, you have this onGetFrame class event, and you have many context information in that event handler. So you can have some kind of criteria you may want to apply, and obviously you can know which platform you are running on. You may want to have some slicing of your XFM files and so on, but it can be done. And I think I will provide a demo of this mechanism soon.
Okay. How do you like a push-pull layouts, example switch layouts? Is it by calling the show method from the two layouts at the same time? Okay, so he's saying how do you have a transition from one frame to another frame?
Well, I was thinking about that. I think the proper way should be to have a stand and manage the showing of multiple instances of these stands, looking at what happens with user interaction. So if the user, for example, slides one stand off on the right side, you can have some event handler for the gesture, and at the same time having the second frame sliding in, let's say, from the left. Remember that everything, if you do everything properly, it's only a matter of having animation running. So if you don't do anything that is blocking, it should be easy to do.
Okay, maybe you should add a sample for that. That would be cool.
Okay, I will try.
What happens if you show frame 2 without closing frame 1 first?
It will stay there. You can obviously have multiple FrameStand instances in your application. They may be parented to different controls, but it's not mandatory. So you can have multiple FrameStands on the same parent, and they live as they were standard controls. So if you're not closing them, they will stay there.
Okay. And can multiple frames be shown in one style book view?
Not at the moment. The concept is one stand for one frame, but I'm considering also that option. It is a different approach, but I have considered a bit. I'm not sure if it would be really useful, but I'm considering a bit that. We can investigate further. I saw a question about Delphi version supported.
Yes, I was just going to do that one.
I built the component using XE8 mostly, and it's running on 10 Seattle. So I would say these two versions are supported. I think it should work also on XE7. And given there's a parallel programming library integration, it won't run on XE6.
Okay.
Previous versions.
Does your component editor manage the naming conventions needed for actions, etc.?
My component editor, no, but you can tune the naming conventions directly on the component. For example, the pattern used to fire animations are customizable on some component properties.
Oh, yeah, I saw that there. That was one of those where that makes sense.
Okay.
Very cool. Well, if anybody else has got any quick questions, we got maybe a couple more minutes left here before we have to move on to our next session. But definitely check out the blog and the GitHub repository to learn more about TFrameStand. This looks really, really cool.
Thank you. It's the first time for me on CodeRage, so I'm excited to do that.
Oh, this was great. Glad to have you. Real exciting what you're showing off here with TFrameStand. So great presentation.
Thank you.
Roland says applause. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I think we got all the questions answered, but you'll probably get some more emails and comments on your blog and stuff like that in the future as people are trying TFrameStand out and experimenting with it on their own. So thanks for putting this together, and thanks for presenting today at CodeRage.
Thank you, and bye-bye from Italy.
Bye.
Bye.